You're going to want to grab this one, especially if, you think you knew it all about this particular topic. You'll find out in short order you really didn't. The real Watergate scandal, collusion, conspiracy, and the plot that brought Nixon down. Geoff Shepard is the author and on the line with us right now. Geoff, good morning to you.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show, Geoff. And, I love the fact that you gave quite an interview with the Conservative Book Club. And I love the fact that America owes Nixon an apology. That's the thing that kind of filtered out to a lot of us after this interview.
And it happens to be true. It turns out the real Watergate scandal was the trashing of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights in the successful effort to drive Nixon from office, to imprison his senior aides, and to realign political power without the inconvenience of an election. It is a sordid tale of judicial and prosecutorial misconduct that's shocking.
Don't we have somebody who's quite notable in the public eye and having some more legal troubles at this particular point who also had her problems during this time period too?
Well, yes, we do, although our paths didn't cross. She was a young lawyer on the House Judiciary Committee that was serving up the impeachment. But I was a young lawyer, the youngest lawyer on the White House staff, and I was a member of the president's defense team. I worked for Fred Bizart, his lead lawyer. I became his principal deputy. But I worked within the defense that we were working up within the White House itself. I transcribed the tapes. I ran the document rooms that held the seized files, and I briefed and staffed the president's counselors who were launching the public defense of the president. I mean, I'm just a kid. I joined the staff right out of Harvard Law School, and I was in my 20s. So I don't want you to think I was in charge or I was making decisions, but I got to tell you, I was in the room watching this whole thing unfold.
Geoff Shepard is with us. His new book, The Real Watergate Scandal, Collusion, Conspiracy, and the Plot That Brought Nixon Down. It's Riley and Scot on WROK. I was not alive during Watergate. Riley was
absolutely
alive during the Watergate scandal.
How old were you, Riley?
10.
10.
10 when it started, yeah.
You really missed the fun. It was a little more pressure if you were right there in the bunker.
Oh, I bet it was. I just remember the high-level discussions that went on at our family's dining room table over this particular issue and how they were a lot different than what I was hearing at school.
Yeah. Well, what I suggest, what this book does is it discloses all the cheating by the other side. And what I suggest to young people is they consider giving the book to their parents. If their parents are over 55, they were in high school or older when Watergate consumed the nation's attention for months and months. And it's, for younger people, they know the word, but they don't really know what was going on. But if you were in the game, if you were watching TV, if you got your news from the media, which was only headquartered in New York, there were 3 networks, and it was the liberal elite. And you never heard the other side of the story. You didn't have talk radio, you didn't have Fox News, and there was only one point of view. And the one point of view was savagely anti-Nixon. And what I've done, I've gone back. We lost. It was my first case. Always bitter about that. But I was on the staff for 5 years, so I knew everybody involved in Watergate. I worked with them. It wasn't a name in a newspaper. I mean, some I liked, some I didn't like, but I worked with them all. I went back about 12 years ago to take a look and see, what on earth went wrong. And it's like going back 30 years after you lost the state football championship and learning that you could read the other coach's playbook and you could see his game plan. And you could compare what he was doing with what you were doing, because the records of the Watergate special prosecutor are kept at National Archives. It takes a while to get them. You got to know what you're looking for. But I got them. And what I discovered most recently are these memos that document that it's unquestionable that the judges and the prosecutors were getting together in advance of the trial to work stuff out. Now, you don't have to be a Harvard law professor to know the judge is not supposed to meet with one side or the other. But this judge, John Sirica, was meeting with the prosecutors all the time.
Spending some time with Geoff Shepard. The book is The Real Watergate Scandal, Collusion, Conspiracy, and the Plot That Brought Nixon Down. All right, that's pretty egregious when Judge Siric is meeting with the prosecution. What are some of the other egregious examples that people just did not hear about?
Well, they hid evidence. The key in this is whether the folks who really committed the crimes. I mean, there was really a break-in. There was really a cover-up. No, nobody disputes that. But even in 30 or 40 years, evidence has never come out that President Nixon or Bob Haldeman or John Ehrlichman, his top guys on the White House, knew about the break-in in advance. But the guys who were running the cover-up, what they did was decide the way out, the way to be let free or to get reduced sentences, was to testify that they were operating under the direction and control of their superiors. And when a witness changes their testimony in the hands of the prosecution must disclose that to defense lawyers. I mean, that's a key part of our due process. And they didn't. They hid that from defense counsel. Second thing they did, they needed to enhance the government witnesses. These were crooks. Mm-hmm. And they're going to come testify. So what Judge Sirica did was falsely sentence John Dean and Jeb Magruder to severe prison terms so they would look like they were being punished. And then when the trial was over, 1 week after the trial, free. So John Dean, the lead government witness against the guy who ran the cover-up, mm-hmm. he was only in confinement for 4 months, and then only for the period of the trial. And then it turns out, and you won't believe this, but it's all documented in the book, he never spent one single night in jail. He was kept in a safe house, and he admitted a couple years ago in a radio interview that I have that's in the book that during the days he was driven to an office with the prosecutors where he worked on his book. And what the judge did, and the prosecutors knew this, they were participating, was a fraud on the jury and a fraud on the American people. I mean, in any circumstance like this, when it's shown the government cheated, that's the end of the discussion. Go back to your sports analogy just for a second. You can debate forever whether one team or the other would have won in spite of the cheating. But once it's been shown there's been cheating, the results of the game have to be tossed out. And these convictions, these cover-up convictions of Nixon's 3 top aides, they're hopelessly tainted by judicial and prosecutorial malpractice.
Geoff Shepard is with us. The book, The Real Watergate Scandal, Collusion, Conspiracy, and the Plot That Brought Nixon Down. You can find it at bookstores, Amazon.com, GeoffShepard.com as well. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. An interview which you say, if this stuff would have been known at the time, Nixon would have never resigned. Do you think that's really true? Could he have stood up to the pressure? You mentioned how the media was back then. You had just a couple of outlets. You didn't have blogs and talk radio and conservative media. Could he still have survived the onslaught?
Well, they were ripping him a new ear. I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, Nixon was their prime enemy ever since he bagged Alger Hiss in the 1940s. Nixon was a commoner. He was like us. He didn't come from a prominent family. He wasn't movie star handsome. And he didn't have the benefits of an Ivy League education. And the Eastern elite, and yet he kept winning elections. And the Eastern elite, they just couldn't stand it. They loathed the man. He had bagged Alger Hiss, and Alger Hiss was their hero. It was Harvard College, Harvard Law School, clerk for the Supreme Court, senior official at the Department of State, happened to be a communist spy, happened to perjure himself, and Nixon caught him. So, they'll even admit maybe Nixon was right about Hiss, but we're never going to forgive him for getting elected to office from nowhere. So yeah, they really had him. But what was key, and what it's explained more thoroughly in the book, they lied. The prosecutors lied to the court and to the Congress, and they made secret allegations against the president that turned out to be untrue. And my point is twofold. If the president had known, we couldn't refute them. We didn't know they were being made. If the president had known of those lies, he never would have resigned because he knew he hadn't done what they said. Mm-hmm. I mean, they alleged he personally approved and ordered the payment of blackmail to Howard Hunt, and he knew he hadn't done that. So you can argue over, well, if all this were known, if everything in my book were known, I say he wouldn't.
Talking with Geoff Shepard, the real Watergate scandal, collusion, conspiracy, and the plot that brought Nixon down. Available wherever fine books are sold, or grab it online as well. I guess, Geoff, and I know this doesn't deal with the cover-up, the aftermath, and this misconduct and all that, but I guess the overwhelming question, I can remember my dad pounding his fist on the table and saying, well, why the hell did they do it to begin with? Why a break-in to begin with? He was going to trounce this guy anyway. What secrets? What were you hoping to gain out of this?
Yes. Well, that remains for all of us. I mean, I was there, but the break-in was conceived and executed by the re-election committee, and it was literally physically across the street, kitty-cornered from the White House where I worked. We didn't know what on earth was going on. It was a surprise to us, and that's never been. There's all kinds of theories, and I did a lecture. It's on my website. I did a video, 5 Mysteries of Watergate, that goes into that. But the bottom line is nobody knows. It was kind of a group of people run amok. And what the prosecutors did, and they're all Democrats, they were all recruited from the previous administration's Department of Justice. I mean, I've done a lot of research. It's in the book. The top 17 lawyers and the prosecutor staff all came from the previous administration's Department of Justice. It was their legal brain trust. It was as though there'd been a coup from the guys thrown out of office when Nixon got elected. They could investigate us. We couldn't investigate them. And they really didn't care why the break-in occurred because the guys were caught red-handed. So it wasn't worth proving, and it left us with huge mysteries as to why that happened.
Well, if you're looking for a different take on a watershed event, you've got it right here from a guy who was there. The real Watergate scandal, collusion, conspiracy, and the plot that brought Nixon down. Geoff Shepard is the author. Geoff, thanks a lot for your time. Wish you a ton of success with this book.
It's a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it.